Well, hi again, everyone. Thanks for hopping on today. I'm Jenny. You have made it to Immersive Espresso, our little speaker series about rebooting immersive in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, looking both at kind of the tactical challenges, opportunities, as well as just the pause of coronavirus to kind of look at what is immersive, that big picture piece of, a role of arts and civic space, and any of those kinds of questions. We're super excited because today it's going to be a little bit of, I think, all those elements. We want to jump right into it because if you're familiar with Kahlil Ashanti's work, if you looked at his website, if you even just read the tiny bio that we've got on the Eventbrite page, you know that it's a huge honor for us to have an hour to all spend together today. So I'll give, if you haven't seen any of that, the quick version of some of what he's up to in just a minute. But I just wanted to say thank you, Kahlil, for being here.
Hey, thanks everybody. It's good to be here. I do exist. I am human. Just thought I'd keep my camera off because of these Zoom calls can sometimes suck up bandwidth and things get choppy and the audio gets choppy. Plus, you'd much rather look at Jenny. She's gorgeous. She's very professional and does a great job. So here I am, and I'll be really happy to answer questions and interact with everybody. Thanks for having me.
Yay. Yeah, you guys do get to see me at not 2 in the morning, so that should be at least a little bit better than what it normally is. Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know, Kahlil is an award-winning actor, really kind of performer of all stripes, web developer and entrepreneur. And I have to mention all of those things because they will all, we hope, come up today. They all, I think, have something to say about audience and his experience and what's been on his mind about sort of that connection between artist and audience or participant or any of the nouns that in immersive we might give to folks who are, taking part in the work. He's also the founder and CEO of WeShowUp.io, which we'll definitely hear about in just a minute because it's hopefully a platform that folks here in Colorado can take advantage of as a way to grow audience and manage ticketing and all sorts of things, whether for virtual or live events. We got first in touch from Denver Fringe, so that'll be a whole nother thread to this conversation. He does have performance basic training that will be at Denver Fringe this weekend. We'll talk more about that as well as about Fringe in general and some of what's coming up there throughout the conversation too. But I guess maybe we'll start sort of in time reverse, I guess. One of the most recent big projects you're up to, which is this WeShowUp.io platform. What is it? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
WeShowUp.io, what is it? It is a digital tool, and it's a pay what you want tool for experiences. And it's the first one that's actually digital. So before WeShowUp existed, I still am, but I was an actor and was performing a show about my violently abusive childhood called Basic Training. And this came out of my time in the U.S. Air Force, where I served proudly for 4 years. And I joined the Air Force to escape a violently abusive childhood. And one of the things I had the honor and opportunity of doing was performing with a group called Tops in Blue. At the end of every Tops in Blue performance, Tops in Blue is an all active duty military performance troupe that from 1953 to 2015 was tasked by the State Department to perform for troops in war zones to remind them what they were fighting for. And so we would perform for troops often who were sitting on tanks, and we were required to shake the hands of every audience member afterwards to thank them. And so that sort of bled into my personal life as an actor as I continued to perform. And that's where WeShowUp came from, was me performing shows, shaking hands with people after the show, and just thanking them. No sales pitch, not asking for money, just saying thank you for choosing to spend your money and your time listening to my difficult story. And people kept saying I would have paid more for that. So I thought, well, let's try pass the hat. Let's try pay what you want. So before WeShowUp, there was pay what you want. And I found out that people would often pay more than I thought they would, but I couldn't connect the two. So I'd have Jenny would show up and she'd see the show and she dropped like $30 in, and then the average that people dropped in the bucket was very high. But I had email addresses here and cash over here. And with all the different companies creating apps online, I figured there had to be one that connected the dots, right? And there wasn't. So I built it myself, and that's how We Show Up started. You can make a reservation for your show or your experience. You can charge $3 or $4 up front, whatever you want as an artist. People make a reservation, they pay up front, enjoy the show, then as they're leaving, get a text or email saying, hey, how much would you like to contribute? Pick one of these choices, or there's an empty text box. Knock yourself out. First time I tested it, I made 82% more than I made performing on Broadway, and the rest is history. I've always wanted to say that. The rest is history.
Forgot I muted myself. You've talked a little bit about that, specifically that part of, you could ask pay what you want up front, but yours is at the end, just like kind of in Tops and Blue, as you said, there was that connection with the audience, or the, just the people who you were talking with after the show. And it sounded like that, I mean, that's an important piece of it. Could you tell us a little bit where you're coming from on that side as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's deceptively simple, but it's difficult to know the value of something you haven't seen. And although with We Show Up, we do allow artists and organizers, and it doesn't have to be just for theater. I mean, we're being used for educational workshops and virtual wine tastings. You can pretty much anything where you want to attract an audience. What we learned over looking at the data over the course of this company is you can still ask for something up front, but it doesn't need to be a ticket. The word ticket lets people know we're done here. I have your $35, enjoy the show and go away. With We Show Up, I thought, what if the audience could be the hero of the story? I mean, look, we're all performers. We work for the audience anyway. So why not recognize that and honor that in a financial way to put our fate in their hands? And so that's the importance of the business model, is that we're not asking for donations, we're not asking for tips. We are professionals who have done the work and seek to serve those who connect with our stories and see themselves in us. Pay something up front, a couple of bucks, enjoy it, and then we ask you to pay when the emotional value is the highest. We also have a model where it's free to make a reservation up front. You only pay if you don't show up. Otherwise, you can pay afterwards. So yeah, that whole pay afterwards thing. I mean, there's pay what you want models out there that ask you up front before you've seen it how much you want to pay. That's okay too. But what I've learned, and I'm sure some of the performers out there can testify to this, is that after people have seen you be awesome, they're even more excited about what you just did, and they're more likely to pay more. And that's what our data shows as well.
Feels like there's something there too on the just relationship piece. Sort of what you said of, you're leaving kind of your fate in their hands. That just sounds like it does foster a little bit more of a human connection that the experience itself is, but almost usually is separated from the ticketing platform.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Jenny. It's basically what I feel like a lot of, and I think COVID has exposed a lot of this, is that there is a perception deficit on the part of a lot of us as artists about the importance of building a relationship with your audience. When you stream for free on YouTube, there's no relationship because you have no idea who they are. You can't reach these people. You have no idea who they are. YouTube owns them, you don't. YouTube has a relationship with them, you don't, because you can't reach them. So how do they support you? And that's the importance of us as artists, thinking about the long-term benefits of creating value around what we do, not doing it for free all the time, so that we can actually benefit from that relationship rather than what it was pre-COVID, which is a transaction. Hey, I'm a performer, here's the ticket, buy it, and I get no data as well. So that's sort of the gap we're trying to bridge, and really what we stand for as a company.
I want to return to a little bit later some of the pieces of Tops and Blue and the basic training performance, but you mentioned the pandemic, and obviously the sudden shift that many creators have all had to do suddenly of either turning their work virtual or finding sort of alternative streams. I'm curious via, I mean, your own practice, but also through seeing so many of the artists who use We Show Up have to make that switch. Are there what are some of the interesting things that you've seen or takeaways or things that as folks from our community are thinking about or in the process of maybe making work that once was totally meant to be in person, bringing that online? What are some of the tips that you'd have, or again, yeah, just interesting approaches that you've seen that might not be necessarily at the top of their minds for how to do that?
Yeah, some of the things we've seen, well, it's twofold. Number one is language. So using words like donation and tip doesn't help anybody. They have their place, but it's important to clarify to your audience exactly what you expect from them. A tip means that they've already paid full price up front. You go to a restaurant and you pay for your meal. They didn't ask you what you wanted to pay for the meal. You paid $17 for that salad. A tip means they kept your water full, they did a good job. And so that language really makes a huge difference in the success a lot of our artists are seeing or not seeing. The word donation, we don't, that's for nonprofits. I feel like we as performers, we work hard, and there is a time for donations when we're performing for charity. But some of us aren't running charities. Some of us have mouths to feed. So that's part one, and then part two is we see the most successful artists. It has a lot more to do. It's not about just turning on the camera and doing what you would normally do on stage. Performing for camera is not the same as performing for a live audience on stage. And so the performers who understand that and are able to actually interact with their audience online throughout their performance end up making more money. Because I feel like it is a mistake to just turn on your camera and start talking at people as if they're sitting there in an audience. And the other thing to consider with that is, what I've heard from lots of performers, is people have choices. So, if you're boring and you're just talking at them and they don't feel like they're truly a part of it, they'll turn on Netflix or check Twitter or do whatever. It's think of it, Jenny. It's the same as when you go to see a show on stage and it's boring. You start checking out mentally. Live streaming suffers from the same stuff. So, number one, please be putting quality out there. If your show is not quality, We Show Up is not. It's not life support for your show. But assuming you're putting quality out there, those are some techniques that have helped people. You're muted, Jenny. You're muted.
Thanks.
Right.
It's almost even more competition than when you tune out in a show. It's true that because now you're in that flattened space too of it's on the computer and Netflix is a click away, or it's just the environment does seem like it adds a lot there. Are there things, I guess, on that note? Look, so there have been two events over the course of, particularly in the isolation phase of the pandemic, that stuck out for me for a way that virtual felt for a second like it was doing something to build or generate community in a little bit of a different way. One was just, it was a series that just, it was the regularity of it actually made it that way for me. I think I had a daily appointment at 6 p.m. my time, to log in and listen to this series led by Ingrid LaFleur. And there was something about just, showing up and the consistency of it that made it feel a lot more intimate than I think, it was a Zoom talk. You could submit questions kind of like this one, but there wasn't much more there in terms of an interactive piece. But there's something that felt more intimate about that. And then Rainbow Militia's Rainbow Ruckus, which they are performing at Fringe as well. Something interesting there, a bit like what we have here, especially if you switch to the gallery view. It's just that, the chance to sort of see the audience. It hadn't occurred to me before then, but, in a theater, you're all looking at the stage. In immersive, obviously that gets a little more complicated, but you're not usually looking as specifically at other participant or audience members versus when we're on Zoom. Now suddenly you're seeing people's reactions. And there's just a sort of intimacy that came out of that, I feel like. Are there, I mean, have you seen people doing interesting work around that about kind of
Yeah.
building, growing community or new audiences through all this?
Yeah, yeah, and this is actually kind of answers Lonnie Hansen's question about being seeing people use We Show Up. With We Show Up, you don't actually have we don't stream the content. You still use Zoom or YouTube Live or whatever platform you like. Probably not Facebook because you can't actually password protect Facebook. But what people are doing, and this is a really great example, Jenny, was there was something on March 28th, I think, that weekend, which was really early in the lockdown, called Doomed Fest, and they used YouTube Live. And they figured out, we helped them figure out how to password protect it, which we do with all of our artists, because I love to code and it's fun. But they used YouTube Live. There were several bands, right? And what you could do was they did a music festival, Jenny, of like 22 different bands over a weekend. And it was to raise money for Live Nation, for the folks on Live Nation who worked the soundboards and load the trucks and all of that, right? And the way they used it was absolutely incredible because there were bands. So to just give you an example, if you're looking at your screen on your laptop or on your phone, you'd go see these bands, and the screen was divided into four, and there'd be a lead singer, drummer, bass guitar, and keys on each quadrant. And they would each talk to the audience throughout the show. So they didn't just show up and just start playing. They would talk to the audience. They say, "Hey, I'm Jenny. I play bass guitar, and I'm from Aurora, Colorado." And so they'd play, and they were all in sync. It was like they were all there at the same time, but it was a really creative way to be able to engage people who are watching something on YouTube that I hadn't actually seen that done that way before. So that was actually a really great way. I've seen it used. Another one is virtual wine tasting. We have someone named Barb Wild who does these incredible now, who would have thought you could taste wine online, right? Which you can't. But it's just amazing the way she hosts these sessions of people who actually share her enthusiasm for not just drinking wine, but obviously there's a lot of behind the grapes and the colors and all of that. So it really does have to do with, and this goes back to the live entertainment world, which I've been a part of since 1988. You have to care enough to think outside of the box and just offer something unique rather than taking the easy road and just flipping your camera on.
Yeah, that's interesting. The music piece of, back to what you were saying on just using the technology differently too. Um, being able to focus in or have a more private connection almost with individual
Yeah,
members of the band when, okay, live, the whole point is kind of it's this thing. It does make me wonder in, the theater world and immersive or experiential or experimental theater in particular, where a lot of times you are breaking out for maybe the one-on-ones, or like, are there ways that we can do that from the tech, virtually
yeah,
as well? Um,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, well, we have some pretty cool stuff that we are offering for artists and organizations with VR, virtual reality. So if you can be watching this, let's say this interview, and you can be sitting in Royal Albert Hall. So using without the need of goggles, you can take your phone and look to your left and your right, and you're sitting, you know, upper balcony in Royal Albert Hall, enjoying this interview. um, it's We have these immersive e-commerce experiences where yes, it's a virtual wine tasting, or you're listening to a band, but you can actually buy their music. You can buy their merch. It all happens in this immersive environment, so that you're not just sitting there listening. You can actually interact with them in ways that help the artists and the creators make more money. And that virtual reality thing, the company that we're working with, it's been their life work to create photorealism. So it doesn't. So when people think virtual reality, they typically think it's a 360-degree view and you're in one spot looking around. We Show Up now offers the ability for people to actually walk around in this space and look at things closely. And you're sitting on a lawn listening to a cello player. You can you can look down and see the grass. And I don't know, it's just been really exciting.
Yeah, it sounds it. We have to do another one of these using that. I want to be
Yeah,
there.
yeah, so much fun. And we're getting interest from museums and art galleries and cannabis stores, which I thought, well,
It's true that they are, I don't know, at least in Colorado, am I right? I mean, they do a lot, just from, I think, having a lot of liquidity. They
yeah,
actually jump on really interesting, innovative stuff.
that's right. And that's what it's going to take for us to survive, Jenny. We all love the arts. We know how important it is. Preaching to the choir here, but we need to innovate. And what we've seen in the last 10 or 15 years, those of us who are old enough, we've seen taxis, we've seen bookstores, we've seen everything get disrupted. And I feel like COVID has accelerated innovation in a way that's going to force a lot of our colleagues and industry colleagues to think outside of the box. And if they don't, they're not going to last. It's just a simple fact.
So there are two questions from folks I want to bring up. One is really relevant on this. What are you thinking about that? I mean, so coronavirus has obviously forced our hand on a shift to virtual and or other kinds, there are these other sorts of innovative ways people are working around the challenges of social distancing, whether that's, sort of, more kind of public and civic space type events, or some of the like mail, or actually like interesting theatrical experiences through pizza delivery. And I mean, there have been some really good things. But as someone, I mean, so you've been on both and all sides of, the in-person experience, everything from really intimate, to large audiences, to then also, creating something that is meant to be experienced as the video or as, whatever persists. How much of the question is how much of the virtual performance will stick around, and which aspects will we want to hang on to once we can be back to face, like which are the parts of the innovation it's just, all right, we're getting through this time, but which are the ones that there might be something there, that is meaningful and is going to last.
That's a great question. I do feel like because of the ability to reach an unlimited audience, the aspects of virtual that will stick around are the ones that allow immersion. So let's use the theater industry, for instance. Watching theater on video in the best of times is really, really horrible because it's a camera at the back. You got 10 people on stage, they're talking to each other, you can barely see anything. But if there's a way to create a more immersive version of that for a live stream audience, I think that could survive. We do know that this isn't going away. This whole COVID thing, just looking at the way the United States, among other countries, has responded, people don't want to follow the rules, so that means it's going to last longer. So live entertainment will definitely come back. It's going to have to, but it'll never be the same. Doing something in a packed house will never be the same. And I think what's going to survive are things that create a sense of belonging and scarcity and value for those that we seek to serve. It's not going to be an all or one sort of scenario, but it comes right back to the organization and how they see the urgency of the situation and the need to embrace new audiences. There's absolutely no reason, if you have a live gig happening, you can't be streaming for audiences in Italy and Norway and Greenland and Japan to also enjoy it.
So the notion of belonging, it seems interesting from, thinking about audiences and thinking about just inclusion, really, whether it's kind of on all fronts. I'm curious from your own experience, and then Lonnie, I promise I am going to get to the question on some of the data too, because I think that is an important and interesting one. But just kind of pulling from this piece. So this weekend you have a piece at Denver Fringe, first ever Denver Fringe Festival, Basic Training, which has been highly awarded. do want to make sure everyone knows this. It was the Scotsman's Fringe first award, so considered, the best new writing at Edinburgh. New York Times critic pick when it was off Broadway at the Barrow Street Theater, and it will be streaming live to your living rooms this weekend for the upfront $10 of the Fringe, of which 9 goes to performers, and using We Show Up actually as platforms. You can actually experience that from the audience side as well. So definitely encourage people to check it out. I think it's the Friday 10 p.m. show because it's my really early Saturday morning. So also would love to chat with people if anyone else is going to the same show afterwards. But you spoke to it a bit before. A really intimate show, a autobiographical show, which I did also notice on some of your past work, that you worked on Post Secret, the show, which I didn't have experience with the show itself, but I think as most people in our generation do have experience with Post Secret, the little postcards with super personal, super intimate confessions, really. It feels like there's something there. I mean, where is the kind of when it comes to really how you're connecting with an audience, where do those pieces of just that kind of intimacy and authenticity, I guess, and just like the super personal, does that feel like it has a place, in thinking about kind of why the arts, why theater, why the immersive arts? Is there something that feels important about that part?
Well, and that's what I think is so wonderful about the Denver Fringe and the work they're doing. I just want to send a shout out to Ann, Sabah, Nancy, and their team in their first year. They've been incredibly supportive because this, as a creative, we wonder, where do I start? I want to write a show. Where do I start? And when all else fails, tell the truth. Tell your truth. And it's not supposed to be easy for people to hear. Post Secret and Basic Training, and a lot of my work have that in common, of being able to build intimacy, credibility, and trust with strangers by giving voice to the voiceless and sharing the unsanded edges of our stories in a world that is so hell-bent on trying to project perfection. Our Facebook feeds, our Twitter feeds, Instagram, it's like, I think Frank Warren, the creator of Post Secret, put it best. He goes, at no time in human history have we had more ways to connect with each other, but at no time in history have people been more lonely. And I feel like that's because we as artists have a responsibility to share our stories and the rough edges, regardless of how much pain it might cause, because it allows other people to see themselves in us. Basic Training does that. I mean, look, when I was performing Basic Training off Broadway at the Barrow Street Theater, there were people walking out because it deals with domestic violence and the things that I was exposed to as a kid. It also won New York Times Critics Pick. So, I'll let people interpret that as they will. But the best theater is when you feel like you shouldn't be watching. Mm-hmm. And it was an absolute joy to be a part of Post Secret, because what Frank has done with that community is allowed people to share secrets anonymously in a way that gives people the feeling that they're not alone. It's raised over $1 million for suicide prevention and continues to be a force for good online, where I think a lot of us, a lot of your listeners, a lot of your fans, Jenny, as well, feel like the internet can be such a nasty, divisive place of trolls and all of this. And I feel like places like the Denver Fringe and the Fringe movement, it gives artists like us, who you may or may not have heard of, a chance to voice our stories in a way that hopefully brings some unity to the world.
That resonates a lot, I think, always, and a lot with, I think, what the creative community is working through now, especially too, of just, where the places that the value of the arts for the healing sides, for the connecting sides, like where all that can come through.
Yeah. But the thing is, Yeah, and I can't look, I want to be transparent with everyone in the sound of my voice. I didn't come to this decision to do basic training lightly. The show that you're going to see as a part of the Denver Fringe is pre-recorded, and you'll know why afterwards. It's physically impossible for me to do this live in my basement. But I was an actor failing miserably, living in LA, living out of my truck, going to really terrible auditions, like the Hispanic Cosby Show. I mean, we could do a whole different interview about some of these terrible auditions. But the mistake that I made was I was waiting for someone else to hand me an opportunity instead of picking myself and making the most of my story. And it was in an acting class with Jeffrey Tambor that I realized that I had a responsibility to tell this story that I was not brave enough to tell on my own. But because I shook the hands of audience members as they left, they gave me the bravery to keep going. So I feel like, in order for us to create the unity we seek, we are the people we've been waiting for. And there's no reason for us to just sit here and, oh, I don't have an agent, or, I haven't performed on Broadway. I mean, everything good that's happened in my career, none of it happened because of an agent. The agents found me afterwards because I took the initiative and took the terrifying step of actually trying something that might not work.
Mm. Did you, I mean, I guess just on this, the question of the going virtual piece of it, to bring this as a recorded show, was that a change? I mean, you've performed it live, as live theater in the past.
Yeah.
Was this the first time that it's the recorded?
Yeah. The Denver Fringe will be the first time anyone in the world has seen a recording of basic training. It was the actual recording was shot in 2012 at the Edinburgh Fringe. It was a 2-camera shoot, and I thought it was well cut together. It's actually always difficult for me to watch it, but I wanted to put it out there. The opportunity came up. I was actually scheduled to perform it live at the Denver Fringe. And then, COVID happened, and I just thought, well, I've got a recording. Let's try it. Again, this might not work. I might not make any money with it, but that's called being an entrepreneur. if you want to definitely do something and definitely make money, then be an employee. But an entrepreneur, you have to have that. You got to take a chance, and you know what? It might reach a few people, and for me, that's worth it, even if it doesn't hit me in the pocket, because I know, and I've performed it worldwide live. I know that it reaches people, and this is one more chance for me to share it with people in a virtual context.
I think, yeah, the artist side too, the risk-taking piece comes, I hope at least that for most artists and creators isn't that part they're probably familiar with. But there is something there to it being an opportunity to connect with people. We're certainly grateful. I still think it's so exciting that we can literally have it in our homes, and that I can actually participate in Fringe in general, because I was excited it was going to be the first Denver Fringe, and then I'm like, but I'm 5,000 miles away. So on a very selfish personal level, there's something interesting about the switch to virtual, but it's true too. It's sort of like I've been able to invite, say, my sister in DC, or you can kind of invite and have it be a chance to connect with friends or family all over the world in this way as well, which is interesting, thinking about some of what you're pointing to on audience and the ways that it becomes meaningful. I've been slow on getting to one question that is about We Show Up in particular. Do you have any data on attendance, sort of the difference between prepaying the ticket or
absolutely,
versus no money up front? Is there something built into either audience expectations or just what numbers are coming out of that decision?
Sure. Yeah, 81% of people do pay something afterwards. For live entertainment, people pay 30% more than you would have asked for. For online, for streaming, from March 16th to May 11th, consumers paid an average of 50% more than the artists asked for. So all the data points to a few things, which is people pay more when you ask them afterwards, and most people will pay something. The other thing, a part of Lonnie's question is if people pay no money up front and versus prepaying, the prepaying model definitely makes people more money. So the difference being with We Show Up, you can either charge X number of dollars, we'll just call it $5. You can charge $5 up front, enjoy the show, and then afterwards you get a text or an email asking how much you'd like to pay with an empty text box. If you want to choose your own amount, you can do that. Or it's free up front, and then you only get charged if you don't show up. Otherwise, you get asked how much you want to pay afterwards via text or email. So the model of asking for something up front always generates more income for the artist.
Huh. Is that out of just that notion of just it has more value, like the psychological piece of I've paid something,
Yeah.
it's definitely going to show up and it has value, or?
Yeah, it's the most of the people who use the no money upfront version are typically charities who are just throwing an event and they just want to grow their audience. They're not really worried about making money afterwards. It's so, for instance, World Economic Forum has used our platform for that to create awareness for women entrepreneurs and equity for equal pay for women. So they did this pretty amazing event where they used hey, it costs you nothing up front to participate because they wanted to draw as big of an audience as possible because they get grants and their organization is subsidized, so they're not depending on this money to keep their lights on.
Oh, and just a clarification, also particularly beyond kind of the cost element of it, the sort of show up, like what percentage of people show up?
I'm gonna unmute myself.
Yay, thank you. Hi, Lonnie.
Hi, honey. The question is, if I throw an event and I say it's going to be pay what you want, and people make reservations, I'm asking about the show up rate. I want to know what percentage of people show up? Does a higher percentage of people show up if they've had to pay something ahead of time or they've had to make a commitment versus not making a commitment? So if you ask for a few dollars ahead of time and then you still collect your true money at the end of the show versus no money ahead of time, do you have any data about the show up rate? I'm concerned about people saying they're going to come. There's been a million Zoom meetings that I say that I'm going to come and I don't go to for one or another. What is your commitment data?
Yeah, so the commitment data, it actually depends on the type of event, right? Is it a conference that people are more likely to skip? Is it an artist? But on average, 86% of the people show up, and it's fairly even across both platforms, across both choice sets. One of the things I can say is that what we found with our theatrical partners, with online and live, is that if you have a free event online, it's more likely that you'll get a 40 to 50% no-show rate because people, they don't have any skin in the game, they don't care. If you say I'm going to charge you $2 or $3, then that no-show rate drops to about 17%.
Sorry, I'm typing some of these things down so we can share out little teasers with folks afterwards. And just share that information. It feels really interesting, especially in this moment when people are switching to some big unknowns.
Yeah, really good question, Lonnie. And one of the things I wanted to share with Lonnie as well is the idea of people paying nothing up front and only getting charged when they don't show up is actually from one of our Australian partners in Sydney, who wanted to test that because they felt that the cultural expectation of paying afterwards was different in Australia than it was in North America. So it's I don't know, I just love these sort of psychological getting in the weeds of how do people think about purchases and trying to be respectful of the different cultures as well, because it's definitely no other company is doing what we do online. So we've actually received a grant to sort of share this data more widely. So I'll definitely let you know, Jenny, as we sort of compile that. I think it's going to be really interesting and hopefully really helpful.
Yeah, please do. We would love to share that out, reports or raw data or whatever it is, with everyone. That's really. Did he elucidate at all on the Australia, just the perception being different about paying afterwards?
Yeah, well, I feel like, and this is, I think it's the same in England, but you know, in England, uh, I know that there is no tax included. So there's no separate tax when you buy a sandwich at Tesco, which is a supermarket in England. It's not £7.50 plus tax. It's £7.50. And so the idea of asking for something afterwards is fairly odd because it's like, hold on. And so that's in Australia. It was sort of a similar conversation, uh, and and it was also about, being able to embrace people who can only pay zero. Like, it's free to show up. If you cannot afford to pay anything afterwards, then that's great. But do give us the courtesy of letting us know that you will not show up. So yeah, that's sort of, sort of a deeper, sort of the deeper conversation about the audience and cultural expectations in those markets.
Super. That
I
is
also
super.
think it's, I also think it's, it's only polite, right? If you're not going to show up, let us know. We're going to take $2. It's just kind of a common courtesy, and that you should know that the platform allows you to send people an email 48 hours before that says, hey Jenny, remember this event's coming up. If you cannot make it, please, you can cancel now, no charge. But if you fail to let us know and you still don't show up, we're gonna have to charge you $2 or whatever.
Yeah. The psychological piece, I would be so curious to see the data because it does feel like the dynamic of the relationship is, it also changes. It does stop being like a transactional, I paid for a ticket, but that there might be some opportunities, just in approaching ticketing, or maybe ticketing's not the right word, but, approaching how people are able to attend an event in that way. There are ways to push on maybe like just that relationship piece.
Sure.
So we've got about 10 minutes left. So I do want to say, if anyone does have questions for Kahlil, also sort of on anything, I know we've popped a bit around from the performance sides to We Show Up, but if there's questions anywhere, please throw them in there. I do have a random curiosity wildcard question personally, but also Kahlil, is there anything that you either hoped we'd talk about today or that you would like to share or just talk with?
No. I mean, I guess the fact that it's extremely easy to get started. If you go to weshowup.io, you can start your free trial, and we send you an email to ensure you are indeed human. But other than that, it's self-serve and just takes a few minutes to be up and running. Yeah, that's really it.
Yeah, and you can, so folks can sign up free even now if you do. I think I noticed it was William Rader's show, who's part of my wildcard question, and your shows at Fringe use it. So again, from the audience side, people can experience it that way if you're getting tickets.
Yeah.
We do, David actually has, bunch of questions. So one, does the online format flatten the price curve? So, in face-to-face, Hamilton on Broadway is a different price than community theater, for example. Are you seeing that flatten a little bit once kind of everyone's in the virtual space or not?
We're seeing people pay more for online than they would in person, actually. We don't have any one-to-one comparisons yet, but just in general over the events, because we actually launched in March of 2019, which so we can actually do a year-to-year comparison. Yeah, it's people are definitely paying more for online shows than they would for live shows, and I think that based on customer feedback, that has a lot to do with the fact that, like you said, Jenny, they might not have ever been able to participate if it weren't for them being online. So
yeah, it does raise really interesting possibilities about just access, sheer access. geographically or community-wise or in other ways. And then, I mean, what you're pointing to on the pricing too, that there's a way that that affects access as well. To be able to do it this way is kind of a way of like letting the audience and the system maybe figure itself out in a way that's does a lot towards access and inclusion, and just really asks it to be about the connection with the artist, between artist and audience member.
Absolutely.
Amanda was wondering, is it a platform that we can use per event or a monthly annual subscription, or just in general a little bit on the cost side?
Absolutely. Yeah, if you go to weshowup.io and click on pricing, it's all there. The way it works is it's either or. You can choose. So right now, you can get started as an artist for free. Your first 50 attendees, audience members, are free. We take nothing, and then it's 15% per transaction after that. We also have an enterprise tier that we use for large festivals and things like that, that we work with you to come up with a monthly fee, which is usually no less than $60 per month. And then it goes upwards from there. We call it elevator pricing. So it's based on the number of gigs you do per month or per year. So we work with you on
that. Okay, everyone feel free to keep asking questions, but in at least this momentary pause, I'm going to ask my weird curiosity one.
Here comes.
So I mentioned Will Rader. So here in Denver, I don't know if you connected at all, but Will Rader is a magician, Denver-based magician who also founded a ticketing platform called Well Attended, and folks in this community may know as well. He does podcasts about marketing and ticketing and that side of things. So another resource for people to potentially be able to look at. But where my question is you also performed magic for a while. And as a creative technology person myself, is there some secret connection between being drawn to magic and web development or coding, or because it just seems so interesting to me that is this weird intersection point for both of you?
No, I had no idea that Will did Well Attended. The website looks pretty cool. I just didn't want to create another ticketing company. I think the world's full of them. So as a performer, I dealt with way too many of them, and it was just a really great book by Peter Thiel called One to One, which talks about developing products. I highly recommend it for your readers. Thiel is Thiel. Peter Thiel is one of the first investors in Facebook, and is part of the PayPal mafia. I don't agree with everything the guy says, but this book really talks about differentiation and market opportunities. But yeah, look, it's I think it's complete coincidence that we both did magic. Yeah, my journey doing magic. I think Will sounds like a real magician. I was a real magician for a small amount of time because I was a quick study and performed at a show called Caesar's Magical Empire at Caesar's Palace. Because when I got out of the Air Force, when I got out of the U.S. Air Force, I was trying to find a job, and as walking through Caesar's Palace, and I came across this queue, this line of people waiting to audition for this Caesar's Magical Empire show, and they were all dressed like wizards standing in the middle of a casino, which even in Vegas seemed weird at the time. So I hopped in line, and I was able to not only do the magic audition, but then I performed it in Japanese. And I'm pretty sure that's why I got the gig, because I could not only perform and catch on, but I could perform it in another language. So that was my first entrepreneurial endeavor. That was when I was bit by the entrepreneur bug. I ended up translating their show into Japanese. Caesar's Palace licensed it from me, which resulted in a 27% increase in ticket sales, and the only show in the history of Las Vegas to offer the same experience for a different language.
And Kahlil does have a Medium account too, where I encountered that story there, which I just thought, I mean, that really says something about audience too. And that invitation, I guess, and welcoming of seeing tell me if I'm getting any of this wrong, but you know, seeing a lot of Japanese speaking people in the audience each night also led, like that was a piece where it led to, okay, you know, instead of just sort of, you know, translating in the middle of the show, I'm going to actually do a completely separate show where it really welcomes them in. Just
Yeah,
a lot, I think, about where, yeah, the audience fits into how you're thinking about work and the arts.
absolutely. It's always about the audience.
Well, I guess in the last couple minutes, so you mentioned weshowup.io is how people can check out this platform for live or virtual events. Are there other ways that they can connect with you, follow your work?
Sure,
read
sure.
about
If you go to KahlilAshanti.com, KAHLILASHANTI.com, you can connect with me there. Also on Facebook with that same Kahlil Ashanti, Facebook.com/Kahlil Ashanti, and on Instagram at Kahlil.Ashanti. And yeah, you know, we would love to connect with any of your listeners or anyone who wants to give We Show Up a try, as well as the new virtual reality stuff that we're offering for museums and institutions and universities to be able to, you know, create new audiences and build value and add e-commerce to the equation. So, yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, is that so on the virtual reality ones? Would that be something where people, you know, send you an email, or what is the current stage of how
Yeah,
people are
yeah,
interested?
you can go to weshowup.io, and there's a form at the bottom. um, and you know, reach out to us, and it'll shoot us an email. We have 5 people on our team, 1 based in New York City, 4 based here in Vancouver, and we'd be happy to follow up with you.
Awesome. I may be writing about those.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Yeah.
You're getting lots of thank yous if you have the chat open from folks.
Yeah.
Couple sort of community announcements, a few upcoming espressos, as well as performance stuff. So Fringe, we have mentioned it, denverfringe.org is where you can see the full lineup for this weekend. Starts on Thursday and runs through Sunday, including, of course, Kahlil's basic training, your chance to see it live, well, virtual live. Do we still call it live? Is that another language question?
Yeah, it's virtual, I guess. Yeah, would be
Well, we need a whole new dictionaries for the ways that already immersive was a little murky as a word, and you know, are they participants? Are they? And then now with this virtual, just everything shifting. But you can catch basic training there, as well as again experience weshowup.io. Also, lots of new Colorado productions at Fringe. So Rainbow Ruckus by Rainbow Militia, William Rader, who mentioned Interactive Magic Show, Sort of Fairy Tale, Portland Rain, Date Night, Locked In, and much more. Those ones are all Colorado. There are links to those and to basic training in the Eventbrite, or you can just find them all really easily on denverfringe.org. Plus more works from around the country and the world. Mentioned tickets are $10. None of that goes directly to the artists, with opportunities to support further as well. Next week, actually, Wednesday, July 1st at 6 p.m., we'll be doing a talk back with one of the performers, Christopher Robin Donaldson, whose Fringe will be the world debut of a musical that they then retuned for virtual Portland Rain. Tickets also on denverfringe.org. Denverfringe.org is where you will find the tickets and info on all these. And then 2 weeks from now, Wednesday, July 8th, at this time, again, noon, the talk back with Christopher Robin is going to be at 6 p.m. And all this will be in the emails, and we'll post on social. But Wednesday, July 8th at noon is another Immersive Espresso, Creativity for the Common Good, with Evan Weissman of Civic Health Club, Warm Cookies of the Revolution, who many of you may know, all, or at least know the work of. Kind of episode devoted to transformative experience, more on this intersections of art and civic issues, and in particular, how do you foster social intimacy even at physical distance, which will actually be, I hope, a really nice way to continue some of the threads from this conversation of just, you know, what it means to be creating work that can foster a true connection with the people who are experiencing it. there are rumors in the air about a few new physical Colorado shows about to be announced. So if you don't already get our newsletter and are interested in that, subscribe at immersivedenver.com. That's also where we will throw information and the links to all of these upcoming events as well. And then I think that's it. I think those are all the pieces. David, or does anyone else have any news and announcements to add? No? Okay, then with a minute ago, I guess, oh, wait, new message. No, all good. Minutes ago, thank you to all of you for being here. It's so nice to get to see you. Thank you again, Kahlil. And
My pleasure.
yeah, wishing you a great Fringe, wishing everyone a great Fringe, I guess, and a great rest of the week.